Want to keep your dollars and cents? Then download the Sense app from the Office of Financial Readiness. That's Sense, S-E-N, money sign, E, to save for retirement, build credit, create a spending plan, or buying a home. You can't do any of those things without money. So if you have sense, you'll download the Sense app. That's S-E-N, money sign, E, today. And be sure to follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And welcome to the Back Brief. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
And last episode, we talked with Dr. Schroden and Special Forces veteran Bob Charest about a term that is making its way through the halls of the Pentagon, the White House. It's a term that has been long used, I think, behind closed doors, and is now, as we come to the sunset, the twilight of our war on terror, this term is rearing its head even more, and the term is great power competition. And it is a term that has different meanings for different folks, depending on who you talk to and what they do for a living. Great power competition in terms of the DoD and the state, the world affairs is going to mean something different. So Jack, you've been around the world. You come from the world of special operations. What is your perception of great power competition?
Oh, my perception, I mean, simply put, is that great power competition is a reference to Russia and China, that it is a reference to strong, powerful states that are competing against the American sphere of influence in the international arena globally. You could try to put Iran in that bucket as well, but they're more of a regional power than a global power. And even within this, I mean, the deeper we dive into it and we drill down into this subject, I mean, the extent to which Russia and China are global powers is quite debatable. The Russians have difficulty projecting themselves into the Pacific. The Chinese don't have a military presence around the world the way no one has the sort of military and arguably cultural reach that the United States has. Like, no one's really even close to us. But there are large, increasingly stronger, powerful countries that want to compete with us in this international arena. And I think that's what people are referring to when they use the term great power competition.
Now, when talking with Dr. Schroden and Bob Charest, the conversation leaned very heavily into the world of special operations and its future in a war, its future in a world where the focus is great power competition and less on counter-terror, direct action, kicking down doors and shooting guys in the face. GPC for special operations sounds a lot like maybe reestablishing relationships that we had with other countries, soft elements, going back to maybe the roots of the Green Berets, and that is working with indigenous people and foreign locales away from a lot of support. These are all missions that are very different from what we saw in the last 20 years across Iraq and Afghanistan. Can you give me a little bit of insight into where this special forces, where SOF is going to be leaning towards in this GPC world? Does this mean like we're done fighting terrorists? And if so, why? And if not, how does it change?
That's a complicated question to answer. I think, first off, to talk about the counterterrorism mission that special operations has been really focused on the last 20 years since 9/11. That is scaling down. It is not to the level where it was, looking at some of the operations that I was a part of, where we were doing 2 to 3 raids per night, per period of darkness, where we were just striking target after target after target in Iraq. And others, live that life as well. That is really not happening, and it hasn't been happening in a very long time now. So the frequency and intensity of those types of operations may be scaling back, but counterterrorism overall is not going away. Especially when you think about the terms of, in the context of great power competition, how many terrorist organizations or terrorists have a state sponsor behind the scene? That's even been a question the last 20 years. When we see terrorism in Afghanistan, is the Pakistani intelligence service behind a certain percentage of those strikes? There are questions like this. Now, in the context of great power competition, these adversaries are likely to use proxies, and some of those proxies may be terrorist organizations. And the special operations community will have to rise to fight and counter those proxy forces or terrorists when and where they rear their head. In other circumstances, special operations will have a mission of deterrence, a mission of alliance building and capacity building in various nations around the world. That's part of the competition. It's not necessarily conflict, but it's a competition that we want to expand our sphere of influence and keep some of our adversaries out of those areas. And then we will have on-call operations that could range from direct action to special reconnaissance to sabotage operations if this did graduate and mature into an actual shooting war. The counterterrorism mission also has bleed over with the POW rescue mission. If we go to war, there will presumably be American POWs behind enemy lines. And that's one of the reasons why JSOC was created, because of the Sun Tay raid in Vietnam, where we had to stand up and create from scratch a very specialized raid force. After that, we realized that you actually need a force that is on call to respond to no notice POW or hostage rescue operations. And that's what led to the creation of JSOC and Delta Force. So special operations is not going to be out of work. I'll put it that way.
So what if we're not in SF? Maybe we're a conventional, listeners, a conventional force guy. What does great power competition mean to the non-special operations world? What does this mean to the average E4, E5 in the ranks who's looking at the world change?
I think it means a lot of what the military refers to as readiness. And that can lead to a lot of frustration in the ranks. And I know it already has. In other words, the force has to be trained and prepared and ready to respond to a potential conflict that could break out. So a lot of training and exercises and maintenance and being, standing by to stand by, as we would say in the military. I've had soldiers remark to me that we're told that our emphasis is on readiness, but what are we supposed to be ready for? It's just not clear many times to the enlisted or the middle management, like, what are we doing here? Well, what is this for? And I think that also speaks to whether it's conventional or special ops, some of the conversations that I had with Dr. Schroden, that the force itself, that the policymakers have not really articulated to the military what our policy is and what we want them to be prepared to do. So there's quite a bit of confusion within the ranks because of that. So we kind of have to, unify or streamline what we would call the commander's intent in the military. What is it we're attempting to accomplish here?
Are you a military spouse? MilSpouse Money Mission educates and empowers those whom service members rely on most. So if you're the household 6, captain of the homestead, leader of the domicile, check out MilSpouse Money Mission from the Office of Financial Readiness. Also, they have an app, Sense app, SEN money sign E, to save for retirement, build credit, create a spending plan, or buying a home. If the last year taught us anything, it was how important it is to save for a rainy day or a COVID year. So if you have any sense, you'll download the Sense app. That's SEN money sign E today. And be sure to follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. One of the things that you and I have talked about when we were building the story has been the idea that today's military leaders are going to go and try and reinvent the wheel. They're going to try and say, well, this is a whole new thing. Great power competitions is a whole new thing. Force on force, whole new thing. We have, prior to 9/11, decades and decades of field manuals and tactics and training and exercises. What is this solution? Is the solution to GPC as simple as, okay, let's go blow the dust off of these old FMs and throw them back in rotation? Or is there some merit to reinventing certain aspects of readiness?
I mean, there's always lessons learned to reflect back on the past, and we shouldn't forget our own history. And freely we should reach back and pull out things that are helpful again for us, rather than reinvent the wheel. But the global political and economic and social situation is just profoundly different than it was in 1989. Since the wall has come down, a lot has changed. That was then, this is now, and we can't go to the past. We can never have the past back. Things have changed. And the kind of threat that Russia constitutes today is profoundly different than the USSR did. The type of threat that China poses is new and different. It's not really like some of the threats we faced in the past. And we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to find new strategies, and we're going to have to be adaptable. So I don't think it's as simple as, restarting a global arms race and just building a bunch of tanks and building a bunch of fighter jets. It's not that simple. We're going to have a sort of holistic effort that wages what some would call political warfare, that we're mobilizing all of the different capabilities that our country has to bear, be it political, economic, diplomatic, and military, to confront these threats.
One of the aspects of the GPC that kind of bothers me a little bit, and it kind of irks me in the back of my mind when I hear great power competition, is did we fail and allow other powers to be competitive with us? Not necessarily squashing them and smashing them and making sure that they can't compete, but as a country, pushing and propelling our technology and ourselves so forward that nobody could compete with us. Is GPC a reflection of maybe this country's stagnation in evolving as a nation, as a military force?
I think it is in some regards. Not militarily, we're still way ahead of everyone else. But I do think it speaks perhaps to some social stagnation in America, that we have a sort of absence of new thought. Some people describe it as postmodernism. What are the new ideas we have for America? How can we make our democracy better and stronger? And it seems like we're constantly looking to the past, that we want to recreate America the way we envisioned it back when we were all children, or when we had a naive sort of fantastical view of America. So I think there is a stagnation in the sense that we have a lack of new political thought in this country. But it's also indicative of us kind of taking our eye off of some of these adversaries. We allowed some of these things to happen. We've shifted after the Cold War. We were in a bipolar worldview, a sort of competition between the West and the USSR, or international communism. Now we've moved into a multipolar world, right? Like I said, that we're in a very profoundly different situation where we have many different countries around the world that are on the rise. They're building their economies. They're getting stronger. They're building their own industries. They're engaging in global trade. This is a good thing in a lot of ways, right? That we don't want to see, other countries destitute and poor, and that leads to problems as well. Then we have to intervene like we did in Haiti and other places. And it's good to have trade partners. It's good to have countries interlinked, economically interlinked with one another. It makes the chances of us going to war less likely. But with China, I mean, we treated them first as a bulwark against the Soviet Union, that we were going to kind of align them against the Russians. And then after 1990, I mean, we treated it as just a marketplace a place that we could, expand into and sell things to, or they could sell things to us and people could make money. And counterintelligence investigations and industrial espionage and cyber warfare that was being waged against us and all of that was kind of treated as an afterthought. It was seen as an annoyance that was sort of getting in the way of future economic development, while a lot of political scientists and pundits and so forth really believed that China would democratize on its own, that there's a sort of natural inertia that would lead China towards democracy. And clearly that has not happened. So I think there's a whole series of missteps, and we could probably do a lot of finger pointing. But yes, we took our eye off some of these threats and maybe let them get to a place that they didn't have to get to if we were a little bit wiser with our foreign policy.
I think GPC is going to change a lot of policy, definitely at the State Department, how we interact and how we decide about what we're going to do militarily. When does military action come back on the table? When is it the last option? When is it the first option? But the other idea that concerns me about that is this notion that we are too big to fail. And that what's too big to fail is our relationships with China and Russia. I've heard a lot of folks say that there's no way we'd go to war with China because our economies are so intertwined. Going to war with them would essentially mean economic collapse on their end, economic collapse on our end. But I am of the mindset that I just don't ever doubt insanity. I never bet against stupid people doing stupid, especially if, and even when it ruins them too. Mutual assured destruction is not a deterrent. It's just a ramification. Do you think that this economic argument that we won't go to war with anybody, we won't compete with the potentially great powers because it's not in our best interest, and it's no one's best interest. Do you think that argument holds any water against military actions in the future?
It holds some water, right? It's a theory in international relations, and it's not a theory that doesn't have any merit to it. But what I would point out is that it's war between America and China, let's say. It's one of those things that cannot happen. It just cannot happen until one morning we wake up and it has happened. The consequences are so severe that it's not something that we can just discount out of hand. And I agree that it is profoundly irrational at this moment for America and China, from either perspective, for us to go to war. And I hope it never, ever happens. But I mean, there have been so many times in history, look at World War I and World War II, in these conflicts where people said, oh, we'll never fight another war that big. That'll never happen. We can't afford
my beer.
Yeah, we can't afford. Yeah, here comes Hitler. He's like, I will wage you another global war and a genocide. Let's do this, So, I mean, we can't afford to just assume that it cannot happen because there's just so much at stake and so much to lose. We would like to believe that. I would like to believe that. But I think that we have to operate from the perspective of not that war is inevitable, but that it's a possibility.
Folks, make sure you go check out our last episode with our guest, Dr. Schroden, Bob Charest. It is everything you want to know about great power competition. It's the new coin. It's the new hotness. Our 3 episodes about the rise of China, talking to former CIA analyst Gail Helt and Matthew Brazil, who's an expert in Chinese espionage. Those 3 episodes, we really did a deep dive on this subject. You like what we did there, folks? It's all connected. It's all intertwined. It's all connected. If you go back and listen to our episode about UAPs and UFOs, it's all connected, folks. I'm just kidding about the UAP, UFO stuff, folks. Or maybe I'm not. I mean, maybe it is connected.
I believe it is.
Oh. I think I know what our next episode is. All right, folks. You can always check us out at stripes.com. But of course, follow us on Twitter, StripesMMPod. You can follow Jack at Jack Murphy RGR and myself, RodPodRod. We're on Twitter. You'll find me complaining about the last UFC fight, and you'll always find Jack out there snarking it up, making the vet bros feel uncomfortable with themselves. That's what he does. Awkward. It's always his Twitter is just an awkward situation followed by another.
It's cringe. I am cringe, but I am free.
As always, folks, make sure that you can use promo code podcast. If you go to stripes.com, check out their digital subscription, you're going to get 50% off your digital subscription to Stars and Stripes. They've been there for you all over the world when you were deployed, and now you can take them home, have it on your phone, have it on your laptops. Promo code podcast. That's right, we're hooking you up. All right, that's it for us. We will see you at the next episode. Did you know that the Office of Financial Readiness has an app? Download Sense app. That's SEN $E. Sense app has the information you need for saving for retirement, building credit, creating a spending plan, or buying a home. FinRed has the tools you need. Download Sense app for tips on the go and follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.